Welcome to AudioCert, where the official study guides are brought to life.
Hello and welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're embarking on a really essential journey, I think. A deep dive into Chapter 3 of the EC Council CTIA. That's the Certified Threat Intelligence Analyst Series. Now, this isn't just another chapter we're ticking off. It's the very foundation for building a secure future, focusing on requirements, planning, direction, and review. Imagine, if you will, you're building like an impenetrable digital fortress, but the world around it, the enemy, they're constantly changing tactics, even their very form. This chapter, it's not about the specific weapons you'll deploy, the fancy firewalls or the guards you'll post. No, this is about the master plan. It's the strategic blueprints, assembling the right team, basically making sure your fortress actually stands strong against this ever-evolving siege. Because let's face it, all too often, organizations find themselves frantically patching holes, right? Playing catch-up. Why? Because they lack a clear understanding of the threats looming outside their walls, or maybe even the true strength of their own defenses.
So this deep dive, this whole conversation today, it's designed to be your architectural guide, your roadmap. Our mission for you, our listener, by the end of this, is for you to walk away not just with definitions, but with a really crystal clear understanding of the entire intelligence lifecycle. You'll grasp the practical, the actionable steps an organization needs to take to initiate, plan, and manage a truly robust, proactive threat intelligence program. It's about building a defense that anticipates, not just reacts. You get me?
Indeed. And what's absolutely paramount here is recognizing that without that meticulous planning and those clearly defined requirements, even the most cutting-edge technical tools, even the most brilliant security professionals, they'll find themselves struggling. It's like, having the strongest walls and the most advanced weaponry in your fortress, but nobody actually bothered to scout the enemy first or plan where to position the defenses.
Right. You're just guessing at that point, firing blindly.
Exactly. You're left guessing. So this module, as we'll unpack it today, covers a vast but really interconnected landscape. It underpins the entire intelligence operation. We'll journey from assessing an organization's unique vulnerabilities and its current threat environment to understanding precisely what intelligence they actually need, not just what they think they need. Then we'll explore how to meticulously plan the program's execution, including those often overlooked bits like budgeting and scheduling, all the way to establishing the right human team and, crucially, continuously reviewing the program's effectiveness. The core insight here, really, is that a truly successful threat intelligence, or TI program, isn't just a one-and-done project. Forget that. It's an ongoing, living, breathing process. It follows a well-defined intelligence lifecycle, demands clear goals, consistent execution, and maybe most importantly, active buy-in from everyone.
And I mean everyone, from the high-level executives shaping strategic direction, right down to the security professionals on the front lines, literally defending the digital gates day in, day out. ###1. Understanding an organization's current threat landscape.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Before we can even start drawing up the blueprints for our digital fortress, before we even think about building a threat intelligence program, we need to know what we're actually up against. So what exactly does understanding the current threat landscape entail for an organization? Where do we even begin looking for that approaching storm? That's the absolute foundational question, isn't it? The threat landscape itself is essentially the sum total of all potential cyber threats an organization faces. And as you know, it's not static. Not at all. It's constantly evolving, always increasing in complexity as businesses embrace more digital connections, more cloud services, more remote work. The attack surface just keeps expanding. The crucial idea here is to move beyond just being reactive, just putting out fires, and instead strategically focus your precious resources on the most critical threats and factors.
So it's not about throwing every solution at every problem.
Exactly. It's not about throwing every security solution you have at every perceived problem, but rather being surgical, being precise in your defense. So how do we get there? We don't just jump straight into defense. First, we need to understand who's out there and, critically, what they're after. The absolute first step, and often the most revealing, is identifying critical threats to the organization. And listen, this isn't just an IT problem. It absolutely demands cross-functional brainstorming sessions, meaning bringing together business stakeholders, IT professionals, your security teams, everyone in the same room, ideally. The goal is to identify potential critical threats and the adversaries who might target the organization, whether they're, nation states, organized crime groups, hacktivists, or even potentially disgruntled insiders. Once we have this big list, we need to rate these threats, not just for severity, but also for probability. We often use two simple 5-point scales. First, impact. This ranges from 1, meaning no impact, up to 5 for critical. And when you're rating impact, you have to consider things like potential revenue loss, customer impact, damage to share value, business disruption, the sheer cost of mitigation, potential regulatory fines, even the long-term cost of repairing your reputation.
Okay, that's the how bad could it be scale. What's the other one?
The second scale rates the possibility of these threats actually occurring. Again, from 1, not likely, all the way up to 5, extremely possible.
This gives us a clearer weighted picture, right? It shows what's both highly impactful and highly probable. That lets you make smart decisions about resource allocation. Focus where it matters most.
So it's not just listing potential attackers, but giving them weight, measuring how bad an attack could be and how likely it is. That makes perfect sense. But these threats target something, don't they? So does that mean we also need to prioritize what we're actually trying to protect inside our fortress? Precisely. You hit the nail on the head. After identifying the threats, we then identify and prioritize assets, data, and incidents. Assets. Well, that includes everything from your people and processes to your products and services. You need to know which of these are absolutely critical for business operations and prioritize protecting them based on the impact of those potential threats we just rated. Similarly, valuable data within the organization, think customer information, intellectual property, proprietary algorithms, that has to be prioritized based on its possibility of exploitation. And don't forget the lessons from history. We look inwards. We analyze past security incidents for recent years that had a significant impact. This is historical data, incredibly valuable for understanding your organization's specific weak spots.
Learning from past mistakes, basically.
Exactly. Finally, we discuss this prioritized list with all the key stakeholders: business, IT, security. This discussion helps assess the identified assets against the potential threats and helps pinpoint the necessary defensive measures. That lets us prioritize our operational efforts with, laser focus. Next up, we need to turn the mirror inwards and assess the organization's current security posture. Now, this posture represents all the different elements or drivers that compel an organization to enhance or develop its security programs.
Okay, posture, like how ready they are.
Kind of. Think of your old firewall as maybe a simple bouncer just checking IDs at the door. An NGFW, or Next Generation Firewall, that's a smart bouncer. It doesn't just check IDs, it also recognizes what application is trying to get through, like a specific game or a video streaming service. And it can block it if it's suspicious or violates policy. It's capable of detecting and blocking far more sophisticated attacks right there at the application level. So beyond basic packet filtering, it offers things like data leakage protection, or DLP, that stops sensitive info from leaving, URL blocking, and even deep inspection of encrypted traffic like SSL, Secure Sockets Layer, and SSH, Secure Shell. A strong security posture is absolutely crucial for defending against breaches. The benefits of assessing it are significant. It gives you insight into the underlying pressure for information security, helps test policy agreement and how well you can respond, offers detailed security requirements often at minimal capital cost, and lays a vital foundation for justifying your budget later. To assess this posture, organizations need to ask themselves some tough questions. How attractive are we to adversaries, really? What pressure are we facing from our customers about security? What are our specific regulatory and legal requirements? And what internal organizational factors are truly driving our security needs? Think of a security posture like a fighter's stance in a ring. Are they balanced, ready for a punch? Or are they off-balance and vulnerable?
That's a great analogy. So it's not just about the external threats, but how well prepared the organization itself is. Does that mean even a really technically advanced organization could still be caught off guard if their stance isn't right? And what about the people, the security team? How do we assess their readiness?
Absolutely. A technically advanced organization can still be caught flat-footed if their operational stance isn't sound. And you're spot on. The human element is paramount. We absolutely need to assess the current security team's structure and competencies. This means evaluating their capabilities across 4 key areas. First, threat intelligence itself. Do they have established procedures for monitoring, collecting, analyzing, and reporting TI? Is the sharing of indicators happening across all relevant platforms? Are relationships established with peers, industry partners, government agencies for that broader intelligence picture? Are their collection sources and techniques regularly reviewed for effectiveness? And, critically, is context being provided to intelligence? Are they enhancing external indicators with valuable internal threat data?
Okay, so that's the TI function itself. What else?
Second, security operations. Is there a clear procedure for assessing and prioritizing incoming threats? Are escalation methods in place for vulnerabilities, ensuring rapid response? Are security rules actually updated based on incoming threat intelligence, keeping defenses current? Are threat detection controls regularly reviewed and optimized? And is existing infrastructure like security incident and event management, or SIM or firewalls, effectively used to gather internal intelligence, looking for anomalies within your own network? Third, incident response, or IR. Is there an established procedure for incident management guiding the team through every step consistently? Is impact assessment performed rigorously after incidents are escalated to truly understand the fallout? Is there a formal reporting procedure with defined disclosures? Are IR controls regularly reviewed for efficiency and efficacy? And importantly, is threat intelligence actually used to make incident response more effective and informed rather than just reactive?
Makes sense. And the last area. Finally, vulnerability management, or VM. Does a formal policy exist for managing vulnerabilities? Are patching efforts documented and traced, demonstrating due diligence? Are roles for penetration tests well-defined? And is there a formal pen testing process to proactively find weaknesses before attackers do? Are VM controls regularly reviewed? And is vulnerability management performed across all security areas within the organization, not just a select few silos? This comprehensive evaluation helps us pinpoint critical gaps and also leverage existing strengths. It makes sure our human guards are as ready as our digital walls.
It sounds like a deep audit of the team's entire operational playbook. So we're not just looking at skills, but auditing the playbook itself. But an orchestra needs instruments too, right? When we talk about understanding the current security infrastructure, are we just listing the tools, or is there a more strategic angle to that assessment?
Well, it's definitely more strategic than just a shopping list of tools. This is the next critical piece. Understanding the organization's current security infrastructure and operations. We review key security controls already in place, but with a focus on how they contribute to the overall intelligence picture and defense. First, SAM, or Security Incident and Event Management, which you mentioned. Think of SAM as the central nervous system of your Security Operations Center, your SOC. It performs real-time functions: identifying, monitoring, recording, auditing, analyzing security incidents. Crucially, it handles threat detection and incident response, tracking suspicious end-user behavior that might indicate an insider threat or maybe a compromised account. Right after that smart bouncer firewall we talked about, we often find IDSS. That's intrusion detection systems and intrusion prevention systems. Now, these are like your internal security cameras and alarm system combined.
How so?
Well, an IDS is purely observational. It monitors traffic, inspects data packets for anything suspicious, identifies possible security policy violations, like someone trying to log in from an unusual location maybe. An IPS, though, is proactive. It doesn't just alert you. It can actually prevent that suspicious activity. It automatically blocks unauthorized access or misuse, acting like a security guard physically stepping in to stop a suspicious person. A gateway is another critical component. It's simply a node in the network that routes traffic, acting as an entrance to another network. Often it's a firewall or a proxy server. It's crucial for identifying installed malware, like remote access Trojans or RTs, on systems within the network by monitoring traffic trying to reach external command and control, or C2 servers.
So watching for those phone home signals.
Exactly. And finally, endpoint solutions. These protect individual devices connected to the network, laptops, servers, phones, from threats that might bypass the main perimeter firewall. This includes things like network access controls, or NACs, antivirus or AV software, and gateway solutions that scan network traffic originating from or targeting individual devices. A proper endpoint security solution significantly reduces data breaches by preventing threats from gaining that initial foothold.
Okay. So we've identified the threats, assessed our people, and evaluated our tools. What's the final crucial step in truly understanding our current threat landscape before we start building new defenses or refining existing ones?
The final, absolutely essential step in this initial assessment phase is to assess risks for identified threats. Once we've identified those cyber threats, we must go deeper. We need to assess the various risks associated with them and always consider the potential business impacts that might result from different cybersecurity measures or lack thereof. This involves a crucial mapping activity that asks several key questions. What operational technology, or OT, systems and IT systems are vulnerable to threats, and why? And this includes human factors like susceptibility to phishing. What security controls are currently in place, and do they adequately cover known vulnerabilities? Which key business operations are vulnerable to disruption if attacked? And what are the possible cybersecurity incidents, their specific impact on operations, and their probability of occurrence? The outcome of all these activities is to clearly define the goals and specific requirements for our new threat intelligence program. It needs to be explicitly designed to enhance the organization's current security posture based on this deep understanding. And it's worth noting here, if internal resources are lacking for this kind of rigorous risk assessment, relying on trusted third parties is often a necessary and wise move. It's much better to get it right than to cut corners early on. Hashtag tag, 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 two. Understanding requirements analysis.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. Once we know our landscape, our capabilities, we've mapped out all those threats, assessed our team, our tech. How do we translate that, well, that sprawling picture into what our threat intelligence program actually needs to do? This step, requirements analysis, it sounds like the bridge, right? But how do we ensure it's a solid one, not built on, assumptions?
Exactly. It is the bridge, and building it solidly is absolutely key. The core idea here is that cyber threat intelligence, or CTI, is essential. It helps reduce detection time and enables an effective, timely response. But before we even start collecting data, before we gather any bricks for our fortress, so to speak, the first step is gathering precise requirements. Without this, you end up with just a lot of data, a huge pile of bricks maybe, but not necessarily actionable intelligence or a clear plan on how to use them. So we begin by mapping out the organization's ideal target state. This involves understanding that to truly leverage threat intelligence, organizations need certain foundational cybersecurity capabilities already in place.
Like what sort of things?
Well, think about robust configuration management, centralized SIEM capabilities, consistent patch management processes, advanced malware detection and analysis tools, comprehensive network activity monitoring, well-defined incident handling procedures, and forensic investigation capabilities. These are the fundamental building blocks you see. They allow you to get maximum utility from TI. Without them, it's like trying to build a roof before the walls are even up.
Right. Makes sense. Foundational.
Exactly. Beyond these foundations, we also assess existing operational capabilities, identifying critical IT assets like applications, public infrastructure, control systems, pinpointing valuable internal assets, identifying possible threat actors, their tactics, techniques, and procedures, or TTPs, and any specific campaigns targeting the organization. We evaluate the efficiency of existing security systems and the ability of security professionals to monitor, detect, mitigate, prevent, and remediate targeted attacks. And importantly, we identify the teams and operations that will support a threat collaboration environment, fostering that shared defense.
Okay, foundational capabilities assessed. How do we then actually articulate what we need from the intelligence program itself? Is there a difference between needs and requirements? They sound pretty similar on the surface.
There is, and it's a really crucial one for clarity and focus. We then move to identify intelligence needs and requirements. Needs are typically high-level strategic questions. They're about what type of intelligence the consumer needs and when it needs to be delivered. For example, a strategic need might be, who are our possible adversaries? That identifies the overarching need for threat actor intelligence. Or, are we protected from botnet attacks, need for botnet intelligence? Or maybe, what vulnerabilities are frequently exploited in our IT infrastructure? Need for malware intelligence. High-level stuff.
Okay, broad questions. How are requirements different?
Requirements then contextualize and operationalize these strategic needs. They answer the classic 5 W's plus H: who, why, what, when, how, and where. So instead of the broad who are our adversaries, a requirement might be much more specific, like why have state-sponsored hackers, hacktivists, or cyber terrorists specifically targeted our organization in the past 12 months, and what precise methods did they use? Or, instead of just botnets, a requirement could be, what are the specific capabilities of the Mirai and Neckers botnets, and how do they impact IoT devices in our critical infrastructure? And for vulnerabilities, instead of the general question, it might be, how are the vulnerabilities in Internet Explorer, Adobe Systems, or Java being exploited by the Rig Exploit Kit to target our specific user base? See the difference? These requirements make the intelligence gathering far more focused, specific, and ultimately much more actionable. Next, we need to properly define threat intelligence requirements. The success of a CTI program really hinges on collecting and defining these appropriate requirements. They aren't just a formality. They ensure we gain the right knowledge, can operationalize the intelligence effectively, prioritize information efficiently, reduce unnecessary costs, and generate intelligence in the correct format for each specific consumer. And this has a direct impact not only on the cybersecurity professionals securing IT assets, but also cascades across other organizational functions, like legal, compliance, marketing, HR, even physical security teams who might need to respond to a breach.
So these requirements aren't just for the tech teams, they cast a really wide net across the entire organization. What are the primary use cases we should think about when defining these? The main goals our intelligence program needs to serve.
That's a great question. Organizations typically start by identifying their most pressing primary use case. The most common, and arguably most important, is prevention and detection of attacks. This involves incorporating external threat data into existing security infrastructure to identify what specific threats need to be detected and blocked before they can cause harm. If an organization has already been compromised, then forensics becomes a key use case. You leverage TI to guide the investigation, understand the attack vector, and aid recovery. And if current security mechanisms aren't effectively detecting threats, hunting is another primary use case. This provides your teams with new malware indicators of compromise, IOCs, and patterns to actively seek out suspicious activity and better understand adversary behavior. Proactive searching. Once these core use cases are decided, organizations need to determine how they will consume the intelligence. Will it be for automated blocking right at the perimeter? Will it be a continuous feed into a SIEM solution for prompt alerting? Or will it be primarily used for those threat hunting operations? Our intelligence requirements generally fall into three directives based on their time horizon. Long term, these are broader in scope, typically looking 1 to 2 years out. Medium term, focus on a specific topic, looking weeks to months ahead. And short term, very narrow, tactical, focusing on days or even hours, very immediate threats. Diving a bit deeper into structure now, we categorize these into threat intelligence requirement categories. First, we have production requirements. These are short-term, top priority. They define precisely what will be delivered to the customer or the end user.
Like the final report or alert.
Exactly. Questions here include, what will be the specific deliverable, a report, a feed, an alert? And what global vulnerabilities can the organization not currently identify or protect against that we absolutely need intelligence on? Then there are intelligence requirements. These address the knowns and unknowns that the intelligence function needs to answer in order to produce those deliverables. The key question is, what must be collected to fulfill these production intelligence needs? This also looks at what vulnerabilities are currently being exploited globally, which ones the organization can protect or identify, and which are specifically targeted or researched by threat actors for future exploitation. And finally, we have collection requirements. These focus on either external sources, like observed threat actors and their activities, or internal sources, such as an organization's own attack surfaces and internal network anomalies. Here we ask, which specific data or observation results are required to fulfill these intelligence requirements? This might involve establishing formal associations with other organizations or security analysts for shared data, mapping vulnerabilities with source feeds, like lists of malicious codes, URLs, or exploit kits, and actively monitoring online forums, underground groups, security blogs, social media, or even the Google Hacking Database, or GHDB, for discussions about exploitation techniques.
That's a very structured way to break it down. It really highlights how interconnected each level is, from that broad question down to the specific data needed. But beyond the intelligence team itself, how do these requirements serve the wider business? How do we ensure they're not just, a tech-centric wish list?
That brings us to a crucial point: business needs and requirements. Threat intelligence isn't just for the security department. It impacts many parts of an organization. First, consider business unit needs. Each unit, say marketing, finance, R&D, will have unique security needs based on its specific technology and data. So we need to consider how TI improves risk management for them, what internal audit needs are met, ensuring legal and compliance obligations are met across all units, and how to leverage TI to protect critical IT assets specific to that unit's function. A data breach in one department can have massive ripple effects, right? Then there's our internal stakeholder needs. Business executives need high-level intelligence to understand key threats to the organization's mission, and let's be honest, the bottom line. Management needs intelligence to protect confidential information and maintain the organization's reputation. End users need personal data protection, especially with remote work being so prevalent. The Chief Information Officer, or CIO, needs intelligence for overall IT security strategy. And the Chief Information Security Officer, or CISO, along with security analysts and security managers, are responsible for ensuring all requirements are met and operationalized effectively. We also can't forget third-party needs. This addresses threats introduced through business relationships, think contractors, suppliers, partners. We need to ensure they maintain defined security levels to protect your supply chain from compromise. A vulnerability in a vendor can quickly become your vulnerability.
That's a big one, the supply chain risk.
Huge. And of course, other teams' needs are vital. IT architects and decision makers need up-to-date threat information to design and secure critical IT assets effectively from the start. Security Operations Centers, or SOCs, need machine-readable TI with the latest indicators of compromise, or IOCs, for rapid detection. Incident Response, or IR, teams need detailed intelligence on adversaries, campaigns, intent, attribution, and IOCs during forensic investigations. Security Control Administrators need adversary TTPs to adapt and fine-tune configurations of security tools like firewalls and IPS. And vulnerability management teams need information on the latest IT system, vulnerabilities, and attack vectors to prioritize their patching efforts efficiently.
Wow, that's a truly comprehensive list of internal needs. It really shows how intelligence flows through and benefits so many different functions within a company. What about the people who actually consume the intelligence? Are their needs different depending on their role and how they use the information day to day?
Absolutely. Their needs can be quite different. We distinguish between intelligence consumer needs and requirements based on their role and how they use the information. We generally categorize them into three main types. First, strategic users. These are your high-level executives like CISOs and IT managers. They consume threat intelligence to understand broad cybersecurity trends and business trends. They use it to make critical decisions on new technologies, security budgets, staffing levels. Their focus is on minimizing long-term business risks and protecting new strategic initiatives. They need high-level summaries, trend analysis, insights into future threats, not granular IOCs.
Okay, the big picture, folks.
Right. Second, tactical users. These are the cybersecurity professionals like IT service managers, SOC managers, network operations center, or NOC, staff, administrators, and architects. They need timely, accurate, and relevant TI to protect the organization from complex targeted attacks right now. This includes things like malware signatures, URL reputations for firewalls and intrusion detection prevention systems, or critical vulnerabilities for patching prioritization. SIM feeds, for instance, help them quickly detect if an alert event is isolated or part of a larger, more complex attack. They're looking for actionable intelligence that directly informs their day-to-day operational defense. Third, operational users. These include your IR teams, network defenders, forensic analysts, and fraud detection staff. They require the most detailed context about alerts and events to determine if something is part of a complex attack. They need deep dives into specific attacks, adversary profiles, malware analysis reports, attack breakdowns, and detailed reports on the TTPs of particular adversaries.
This highly granular information helps them expand investigations, find attack sources, identify compromised systems for remediation, and ultimately stop active threats in their tracks.
That tiered approach makes perfect sense. Ensuring everyone gets the right level of detail for their specific role is key. Now, with all these diverse needs and requirements identified, how on earth do we prioritize them? What exactly are priority intelligence requirements, or PIRs?
Priority intelligence requirements, or PIRs, are the fundamental elements for building a threat intelligence program. They're usually approved by top management. Think of PIRs as the commander's critical questions to the intelligence unit. What do I absolutely need to know right now to make strategic decisions and reduce risk? They are essential for high-level management to make those strategic, operational, or tactical changes needed to reduce risk effectively. PIRs provide dynamic situational awareness about the evolving threat landscape and help organizations focus resources on critical assets, aligning everything with the overall intelligence strategy. They answer key questions like, what specific data needs to be collected? Are there any significant gaps in our current collected data that we need to fill? What talent and resources are needed to fulfill these priority requirements? PIRs are typically a series of focused questions that explicitly guide the threat intelligence team's efforts. Once PIRs are specified, the process moves to validating information sources, assigning confidence ratings perhaps, diligently collecting data, and then rigorously analyzing whether that collected data actually fulfills the PIRs, is truly useful, and, most importantly, actionable. When it comes to the factors for prioritizing requirements, it's really a blend of analytical rigor and, frankly, social skills often involving negotiation. A detailed analysis is needed to categorize assets by importance, but the prioritization of the requirements themselves is also a strategic decision. Key factors influencing this prioritization include benefit, the advantages derived from fulfilling a requirement; penalty, the consequences financial, reputational, operational of not implementing it; cost, the resources and effort required; risk, the probability of the requirement not delivering its expected value; dependencies, those tricky relationships where one requirement's completion impacts another, a silent project killer sometimes; time sensitivity, its lifetime and periodicity, how long is this intelligence relevant; stability,
how likely the requirement is to remain static over time, and regulatory policy compliance, those mandatory requirements that simply must be met, no questions asked.
That's a lot of factors to weigh. Seems complex. Is there a common method, maybe something agile, that helps simplify this prioritization for teams, especially when you have so many stakeholders with different opinions involved?
Yes, definitely. A very popular one, especially in agile development environments, is the Moscow method for prioritizing requirements. Now, Moscow is an acronym. The O's are just fillers to make it pronounceable, standing for 4 categories. Must-have compulsory requirements are those absolutely critical for the current time frame. If they're missing, the project or this phase of it will simply fail. Think of it like needing a roof for your house. Without it, it's not a functional home, right? Should have high-priority requirements are important, but not absolutely vital for survival. They can be held back, if absolutely necessary, but they're still very significant and would negatively impact the project if omitted. This is maybe like having plumbing and electricity in your new house. You could live without it briefly, but it's highly desirable. Could have preferred but not essential requirements are desirable things that would improve satisfaction or experience. They're included only if time and resources allow, without impacting any higher priorities. A fancy patio, perhaps, or a specific type of flooring for your house. Nice to have. And finally, won't have postponed requirements. These are the least important or lowest payback items for the current phase. They're typically postponed to the next phase or iteration of the project. That swimming pool you wanted in the backyard definitely won't happen this year. This Moscow method helps stakeholders collaboratively prioritize, ensuring the most critical elements are addressed first, and it sets realistic expectations for everyone involved. Complementing this, and just as important, we must also prioritize organizational assets. This is absolutely crucial to prevent unauthorized access and data exfiltration, especially with so much critical data now residing in cloud environments or other digital sources. Remember, attackers almost always go for the most valuable targets first. Key assets to prioritize include personal details like social security numbers, sensitive personal information, or personally identifiable information, SSN, SPI, PII. These can be used for identity theft, phishing, creating fake accounts, leading to massive fines and loss of trust. Financial information, credit card details, account numbers, ATM pins. Adversaries use these for direct theft and fraud, leading to severe customer loss and regulatory fines. Intellectual property, business designs, technical content, software. Losing this violates contracts and can seriously erode revenue and market advantage. Sensitive business data, financial records, trade secrets, customer information. Breaching this poses huge reputational and security risks. And login details and IT system information. These are critical because they provide that crucial foothold for adversaries to access other systems in the network, escalating a minor breach into a full-blown crisis. Protecting these, it's like protecting the crown jewels of your digital kingdom. Absolutely paramount.
That's a very clear hierarchy of protection targets. Makes sense. So once we have our prioritized requirements and assets, how do we define the overall boundaries and expectations for this entire program? Like, how big or small is our fortress actually going to be?
That's where we define the scope of the threat intelligence program. This is all about setting the broad scope and high-level objectives before initiating the intelligence process itself. A well-defined scope ensures all stakeholders have a common understanding of the goals, responsibilities, and boundaries. This prevents expensive and time-consuming modifications later down the line. It's like drawing the perimeter and deciding on the number of towers before you lay the first stone of your fortress. The scope typically consists of objectives, requirements, acceptance criteria, limitations, deliverables, constraints, team organization, identified business risks, a timescale or schedule, and a budget estimation. It's the overarching blueprint that keeps everyone aligned and moving in the same direction. Closely related to scope are the rules of engagement, or ROE. This is essentially the formal permission slip to implement the TI program. ROE provides top-level guidance, helping the intelligence team overcome potential legal, federal, and policy-related restrictions that might otherwise limit their tactics, systems, or personnel. It dictates the rules to be followed, authorizes the team to act, and ensures the organization understands precisely what to expect as the program's output. This includes what intelligence is needed and what stakeholder data is helpful for the intelligence function. It's like the official decree that empowers your intelligence team to operate within defined boundaries. And in a world where information sharing is increasingly crucial, but data is incredibly sensitive, we also absolutely need non-disclosure agreements, or NDAs.
Ah, the legal stuff.
Yep, the legal stuff, that's critical. An NDA is a security contract signed between parties to maintain the secrecy of mutually shared information.
These are also sometimes known as confidentiality agreements, CAs, proprietary information agreements, PIAs, or secrecy agreements, SAs. NDAs are powerful legal tools to protect trade secrets, patents, or proprietary information, especially when you're collaborating with external partners or sharing intelligence. Key points for drafting a good NDA include clearly specifying the valuable information being protected, identifying all parties involved, setting the non-disclosure period, and critically, having your legal advisors review it thoroughly. It's all about protecting against improper disclosure, especially of critical threat intelligence that could inadvertently expose your own vulnerabilities if mishandled.
Okay, these legal and procedural documents are clearly just as important as the technical aspects. Before we move on from requirements, what are some common pitfalls organizations should really look out for when developing their threat intelligence requirements? What mistakes should we absolutely avoid making when building this foundational bridge?
Oh, that's a vital question. It's absolutely crucial to avoid common threat intelligence pitfalls. First, and I've seen this derail many promising programs, is relying on unreliable intelligence sources. Trusting low-cost, free, or purely open-source data without proper vetting can flood your system with unreliable information or just plain noise. This can potentially mislead your analysts and put the organization at severe risk. You need to select sources based on verifiable transparency, currency, authority, and comprehensive coverage. Don't cheap out here.
Okay, vet your sources.
Yeah.
What else?
Second, inadequate communication is a silent killer for TI programs. Threat intelligence must be distributed effectively across the entire organization, not just kept within the security team silo. And crucially, it needs to flow upstream to management as well. Using universally accessible portals, regular feeds, concise alerts, and brief, relevant reports is critical to increase situational awareness across all levels. Third, data without context. Raw intelligence data is practically useless. It's like a single word without a sentence, unhelpful, without scope and interpretation. For example, knowing a malicious IP address is attacking is not very helpful unless you know what specific malicious activity it's performing, like spreading a specific malware variant or targeting a particular vulnerability in your systems. Context helps analysts narrow their searches and make effective decisions.
Raw data isn't intelligence, basically.
Precisely. Fourth, lack of standardization. Using different incompatible intelligence formats makes data incredibly difficult to interpret and consume efficiently, especially for automation. Organizations should proactively adopt universal standards like CAPEC, Common Attack Pattern Enumeration and Classification, TAC2, Threat Actor Exchange for Information Sharing, and STX, Structured Threat Information Expression, to ensure interoperability and allow for automation. Finally, and this is a big one, lack of technology capabilities. Threat intelligence, no matter how brilliant or well-sourced, is utterly useless if the proper technology to consume or operationalize it isn't available. Organizations need to ensure they have the required infrastructure, things like a capable SIEM, proxy servers, firewalls, IDFs in place to effectively use that intelligence. Without these tools, even the best intelligence remains just information, sitting on a digital shelf, unable to actually defend your fortress. Hashtag TechHack3. Planning a threat intelligence program.
Okay, so we figured out what we need. We've mapped our landscape, assessed our capabilities, defined our detailed intelligence requirements, hopefully avoided those common pitfalls. Now, how do we actually plan to get it all done? This sounds like a massive project in itself, preparing the right people, refining the necessary processes, deploying the technology, turning those blueprints into a functioning defense system.
It absolutely is a project, and a dynamic one at that. Much like constructing a complex building requires careful planning. The core idea here is that a TI program implementation requires a proper, meticulous plan to prepare the people, the processes, and the technology needed to effectively consume, analyze, and act on threat intelligence. Without this holistic preparation, even the best intelligence can't be fully leveraged. It would be like having, advanced surveillance drones, but no one trained to interpret their feeds or act on what they see.
Right, useless tech.
Exactly. Let's break down preparing people, processes, and technology. For people, an organization might establish a dedicated internal TI team. Or, if resources are tighter, they might integrate these duties into existing roles within the security team. This team's responsibilities are vast and specialized. They could range from cyber forensics and malware reverse engineering to managing TI operations, conducting threat assessments, the critical work of collection, analysis, and dissemination of threat information, and crucial collaboration with all other information security teams like incident response and vulnerability management. For processes, we need to understand how existing information security processes can benefit from TI. This means identifying which specific processes require TI input and how that intelligence should be presented for maximum utility within that process. By leveraging TI, organizations can significantly enhance their security posture through more effective policies and strategies, such as developing a robust defense-in-depth approach or dramatically improving incident detection and response times. An in-depth audience analysis is also required here to truly understand the needs of all TI consumers, ensuring the intelligence is tailored effectively. Sometimes, engaging a managed security service provider, or MSSP, can help integrate TI into the environment, offering valuable external expertise.
And the technology part.
When it comes to technology, proper utilization of threat intelligence requires effective use of both producers and consumers of TI. Raw data producers are your fundamental security systems like proxy servers or firewalls that constantly monitor network activities and generate raw logs and packets. Threat data consumers are security systems like proxies, firewalls, or intrusion prevention systems, or IPS, that take threat data as input to detect and prevent malicious activities in real time. Threat intelligence consumers are typically remote management platforms, such as SIEM solutions, that aggregate and manage the collected intelligence for analysis. And threat intelligence producers are collaborative platforms or external feeds that generate and provide this intelligence. Given the sheer volume of data involved, automation is absolutely crucial here, using standard formats, dedicated TI platforms, and subscribing to high-quality TI feeds. This also means strategically deploying multi-layered defenses throughout the network, operating under the realistic assumption that sophisticated attackers can often bypass a single perimeter defense.
That's a very clear breakdown of the fundamental components: people, process, tech. Once we have those aligned, how do we then go about gathering the actual raw material for our intelligence program? Do we just, I don't know, start collecting everything we can find? Or is there a more strategic approach to collection?
Not at all. Indiscriminate collection is just a recipe for information overload and totally wasted resources. We need to develop a collection plan. This plan meticulously outlines all the activities involved in collecting data, specifically to meet the defined TI requirements we talked about earlier. It's essential to select appropriate data sources based on the organization's specific requirements and goals, rather than just indiscriminately collecting everything under the sun. That can be very costly in terms of effort, time, and budget. Be focused. Threat intelligence data is typically divided into 5 high-level categories for collection. First, phishing messages. Analyzing these deceptive emails can provide incredibly valuable information on specific threat actors and their TTPs, revealing their methods and targets. Second, indicators of malware. Understanding malware behavior helps categorize indicators and make risk-based decisions about how to defend against them. Third, compromised devices. This data source provides insights into unusual device behavior, such as a workstation suddenly communicating with known malicious websites or participating in botnets. Fourth, IP reputation. These are dynamically maintained lists of suspicious IP addresses based on their historical malicious behavior. Things like involvement in web attacks, spoofing, DDoS, distributed denial of service, traffic, or spam campaigns. Factors like device ID, geolocation, and the use of anonymous proxies further refine this data. And fifth, malicious infrastructure. Intelligence feeds on command and control, or C2, networks and other external malicious servers help identify similar indicators within an organization's network, revealing active campaigns targeting you.
Okay, a focused collection plan sounds much more efficient, definitely. Once we know what we need to collect and where we're collecting it from, how do we organize the program's entire execution over time? We need a timeline, I imagine, a schedule.
Exactly. You absolutely need a timeline. That's where we schedule a threat intelligence program. A schedule clearly communicates what activities need to be completed, what resources will be allocated, and with what specific time frame. Its core purpose is to ensure the timely dissemination of deliverables, always considering the availability of the people involved. Key questions to answer here are: what specific deliverables need to be completed? When will each be completed? And who, specifically, will complete it? The steps involved usually include reviewing the project charter for overall guidance, building a work breakdown structure, or WBS, to detail all the individual tasks, identifying all the deliverables clearly, defining and sequencing activities logically, estimating resources and realistic durations for each task, identifying any critical task dependencies where one task relies on another, and finally, developing the comprehensive schedule that guides the entire program from start to finish, or iteratively. Naturally, this structured planning leads directly to planning a budget. The budget represents the combined cost of all the individual activities within the program. It's important for 2 main reasons.
Okay, what are they?
Firstly, for program funding approval, a well-justified budget informs stakeholders about the financial needs and helps secure the necessary resources. Secondly, it provides the basis for controlling project costs later on by allowing evaluation of actual expenditures against an approved cost baseline. The crucial insight here is that the budget isn't just a number, it's really a strategic document. It reveals how serious an organization truly is about proactive defense. A well-justified budget isn't just a cost, it's an investment against potentially exponentially higher losses down the road.
Framing it as an investment. Got it.
Exactly. Budget elements include meticulous cost estimation of activities like IT infrastructure, services, labor, materials, facilities. The basis of estimation, any supporting documents, assumptions made, constraints, confidence levels, the scope baseline, identifying any funding constraints, the threat intelligence program schedule itself, to estimate time-based costs for resources, calendars for resource allocation, understanding the cost of resources over time, and any contracts needed for external services and products.
So we have the tasks, the timeline, and the money lined up. But keeping everyone updated throughout this process is just as crucial, isn't it? Especially for complex, potentially long-running projects like this. How do we keep all those stakeholders in the loop without just drowning them in technical detail?
That's where we develop a communication plan to update progress to stakeholders. Keeping all stakeholders from executives right down to frontline analysts informed is absolutely vital for a successful partnership and ultimately project outcome. This can be done through various methods: dedicated software dashboards, regular status reports, perhaps periodic meetings. An effective communication plan meticulously outlines when, by what means, why, and to whom specific information will be communicated. Elements usually include the project background, a thorough stakeholder analysis, who needs to know what, clear objectives for each communication, the communication strategy itself, identification of potential risks involved with communication, like misinterpretation, and even a dedicated budget allocation for communication, because effective communication is rarely free. This ensures consistent, tailored, and timely communication throughout the project's progress. Once that threat data starts being collected, a key decision is how to aggregate threat intelligence. We need to decide where to store all this collected data so it can be easily, securely, and efficiently integrated with existing security controls.
This is critical for operationalizing. Key questions here are, do we need a standalone platform specifically for intelligence management? Or can we leverage and adapt existing endpoint detection solutions? This decision really depends on the number of sources you're dealing with, your specific use cases, and the extent of analysis you need to perform. Do we rely solely on the intelligence provider's portal, or do we need the raw data fed directly into our own systems for deeper internal analysis and custom correlation? And critically, how do we handle integration into existing security systems? This often involves leveraging those industry standard formats we mentioned, TACNIC, 2i, SDI, and checking for robust API application programming interface, availability to facilitate automated data exchange between systems.
Right, getting the data flowing automatically. So selecting the right tools to manage all this incoming intelligence is paramount then. What are the crucial factors we should consider when choosing a threat intelligence platform or TIP? It seems like there are so many options out there these days.
Choosing the right threat intelligence platform, or TIP, is absolutely crucial for effectively assessing, leveraging, monitoring, and managing the, frankly, deluge of intelligence feeds available. Several factors must be considered carefully. First, it needs to be open, meaning it must easily integrate and support all your required data feeds, ensuring data accessibility and easy conversion from various formats like XML to industry standards like STIX. No vendor lock-in if possible. Second, it must be highly scalable. Computational scalability is often more important than mere storage capacity for processing the thousands, sometimes millions, of indicators added daily, and crucially, for providing context to that raw data. Third, it needs to have a robust search capability. You need easy and efficient searching of all TI data sources, because if you can't find the intelligence when you need it, you can't use it. Simple as that. Fourth, scoring is essential. A flexible, configurable mechanism for ranking threat actors, attacks, and assets, perhaps as simple as red, green, yellow indicators, helps you calculate urgency and prioritize response actions effectively. Finally, comprehensive workflow support is key. The TIP-P must offer structured ways to perform investigations, actively support threat hunting operations, and automate detection processes where possible, streamlining your security team's efforts and reducing manual toil. Beyond just the platform itself, we need to think deeply about consuming intelligence for different goals. Many TI programs unfortunately focus too heavily on just generic indicators, lists of bad IPs or domains. Organizations, however, need to extract contextual intelligence that is specifically applicable to their unique business strategies and risks. For instance, specific goals can include brand protection,
by actively identifying phishing sites impersonating your brand or detecting negative social media comments that could harm your reputation before they blow up. Another vital goal is identification of attacker networks, which means detecting command and control C2 networks and compromised systems that your internal controls might miss, thereby proactively protecting your critical IT assets. And importantly, identification of third-party risks, helping organizations understand security risks introduced by business partners, and consequently establishing additional controls and perhaps more aggressive monitoring of data exchanges with those partners. Finally, to gauge effectiveness and ensure continuous improvement, we must track metrics to keep stakeholders informed. Metrics are not just numbers, they are the essential feedback loop that evaluates the TI program throughout its lifecycle. They assess success or failure and identify critical areas for improvement.
What kind of metrics are we talking about here?
Important metrics include time taken to detect incidents. Obviously, faster detection directly reduces damage and cost. Encounter rate. The number of relevant IOCs received and successfully act upon this directly increases situational awareness. False positive rate, identifying redundant or inaccurate indicators, which impacts analyst accuracy and efficiency. Threat classification, how effectively you can categorize threat actors, their methods, and tactics. Threat escalation rate, a lower rate ideally indicates reduced attack probability and faster remediation. Internal and external incident rate helps prioritize intelligence needs and focus resources. Success rate of threat intelligence, quantifying detected blocked threats, estimating damage prevented, cost savings, and ultimately return on investment or ROI. And crucially, feedback and remarks, collecting quality scores for disseminated information directly from the consumers, ensuring the intelligence is actually useful and actionable. These metrics provide a clear, objective picture of the program's value and highlight areas needing adjustment, making sure your fortress builders are always learning and improving. #tag 4, establishing management support.
Okay, this is all fantastic technical detail and meticulous planning. But let's be real, if we can't get the boss on board, if we don't have that all-important buy-in from management, it's pretty much a non-starter, right? This isn't just an IT project, it's a core business imperative. How do we secure that foundational management support for such a critical and potentially expensive initiative?
You've hit on perhaps the most critical component for any successful program, not just TI management support. The core idea here is that high-level management plays a truly vital role. Security teams can define all the requirements and meticulously plan every single detail, but ultimately, they must escalate a compelling project charter to align the business needs with the threat intelligence program and, crucially, get that executive approval and, importantly, the funding. Without that top-level blessing, it's just a great plan sitting on paper. The first formal step is usually to prepare a project charter and policy to formalize the initiative. A project charter is typically a concise, high-level document. It describes the entire project, its objectives, its goals, how it will be carried out, and the key stakeholders involved. Its primary purpose is to formalize the initiative for management, seek official authorization from sponsors, and ensure everyone involved is familiar with the scope and purpose from the outset. It lays a strong foundation, giving legitimacy and direction to the entire endeavor. Key elements of a good project charter usually include a project outline and any underlying assumptions, identified risks, clear project goals and objectives, the expected benefits, this is key, the defined project scope, a concise description of the project, roles and responsibilities of the team, key stakeholders, critical project requirements, major milestones, a compelling business case, financial commitments or estimates, anticipated deliverables, and an effective communication plan. This document ensures the project is implemented in the right direction to achieve its stated goals. Think of it as getting the royal decree before you start building your fortress.
Okay, so the project charter acts as both a blueprint and a formal proposal. But management, as you said, usually has one thing primarily on their mind. What's the return on investment? How do we really establish our case to management for a threat intelligence program? This is where the rubber meets the road, proving its value, isn't it?
Absolutely. This is where you need to be very strategic, almost like you're pitching to a venture capitalist. You need to establish your case to management for a threat intelligence program by clearly addressing three key areas: outlining the problem, the challenges, and the undeniable benefits. First, detail the drivers. These are the real difficulties or setbacks the organization is currently facing due to a lack of appropriate TI capability. This includes being highly vulnerable to known risks, The often expensive maintenance of damaged assets after breaches occur, unavailability of critical resources due to attacks, wasted time and effort on endlessly patching inevitable security issues, potential legal consequences for noncompliance and data breaches, and critically, the long-term loss of reputation with existing and future customers. These drivers vividly illustrate the pain points that necessitate the program. It's the quantifiable cost of not acting. Second, you must transparently acknowledge the obstacles. These are the challenges or reasons why the project hasn't started yet, or maybe why management might be hesitant. This could include perceptions of high time consumption for the project, insufficient budget allocated historically, the perceived risk of business disturbance from process changes, compliance constraints that might impact operational productivity, a perceived lack of clear return on investment, or ROI, or perhaps an over-reliance on existing, often outdated, technical defenses. Addressing these head-on shows you've thought through the complexities and are prepared for them.
Those obstacles sound pretty familiar to anyone trying to champion a new initiative, I bet. In your experience, which of those obstacles is usually the toughest to overcome when you're trying to convince leadership, and why?
Ooh, that's a great question. In my experience, often the toughest nut to crack is that perceived lack of clear ROI. Cybersecurity benefits can often feel intangible, right? Preventing something bad from happening is inherently hard to quantify financially. Management, quite reasonably, often wants to see a direct financial return on investment. So you have to work hard to shift the narrative from this is a cost to this is a strategic investment against potentially exponentially higher future losses. You have to demonstrate, maybe through risk modeling or industry breach cost data, that spending X amount now realistically prevents losses of YZ and perhaps even catastrophic Q later on. That requires creativity, compelling data, and strong communication skills.
Makes sense, showing the cost of inaction.
Precisely. Third, and most importantly, you must present the benefits. Demonstrate unequivocally that the benefits of having a threat intelligence program clearly outweigh these obstacles. Highlight tangible advantages like decreasing repeated or recurring incidents, saving time and resources, significantly reducing potential reputation damage, improving the overall security posture of critical assets, enhancing organizational productivity by reducing downtime caused by attacks, increasing awareness about related incidents across the organization, improving readiness against future unknown threats, and ultimately enhancing user and customer satisfaction and trust. You need to show that this isn't just a cost center, but a strategic investment that yields tangible long-term value, protecting the organization's bottom line and its future market position.
That's a really powerful framework for making the business case. So once we have that crucial approval, what's the next step to ensure the program stays aligned with the overall business vision, beyond just getting the initial green light?
Once approved, you can't just rest on your laurels. You need to continually apply a strategic lens to the threat intelligence program. This involves having a well-planned strategic roadmap that continuously aligns the program's tactical requirements with broader business risks and overarching strategic objectives. It's about detailing how to use and leverage threat intelligence in terms of business operations, not just focusing on the technical execution. This involves several critical ongoing tasks. First, building and maintaining a strong communication bridge between the intelligence team and management. Ensure communication is brief, concise, and always focused on business impact, especially for non-technical decision makers. Avoid jargon. Second, it means continually training stakeholders on what threat intelligence truly is and how to effectively leverage it in their roles. Because if they don't understand its importance or how to use it, gaining their ongoing support and collaboration becomes incredibly difficult. You must clearly communicate the implications, importance, and specific advantages of the TI program on an ongoing basis. Consistently represent the opportunity as a favorable outcome for the entire organization, not just a security function. Finally, using compelling case studies, numerical statistics, and other relevant data to demonstrate the increased frequency and sophistication of attacks by threat actors can powerfully reinforce the necessity and ongoing value of the program. This helps transition it in everyone's mind from just a technical requirement to a core strategic imperative for the business. #5. Building a threat intelligence team.
Right, the plan's approved, the budget's allocated, management is finally on board,
Yeah.
our fortress has its blueprints, the royal decree is signed. Now, who's actually going to do the work? Building the right team seems incredibly important, especially given the specialized, dynamic nature of threat intelligence. These are digital sentinels, right?
You're absolutely right. This is where the strategy turns into real execution. The core idea is that threat intelligence requires highly specialized proficiency, deep knowledge, and a really diverse set of skills. Having a dedicated, well-structured team is invaluable for truly understanding the who, what, where, when, and how aspects of an attack. It's not just about having the technical tools, it's about having the skilled analysts who can wield them effectively, interpret the complex data, and provide those truly actionable insights. So the goal is to satisfy organizational gaps with the appropriate threat intelligence team. Based on the maturity of an organization's existing security processes, a suitable team can be built. Often it makes sense to look internally first for skilled and dedicated employees. This can be both cost-effective and efficient, as they already understand the internal business operations and culture. 5 essential tasks typically performed by this team include diligently finding threats and translating them into actionable intelligence, conducting regular research on TI news from various feeds and sources, combining internal and external TI into contextualized TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures, to truly understand adversary behavior, actively involving themselves in intelligence sharing groups to broaden their perspective and contribute back, and providing crucial threat analysis and incident response support when needed. Additional tasks might include utilizing threat analytics effectively with SIEM solutions, actively searching for threats based on known IOCs, indicators of compromise, sharing threat knowledge internally with other analysts and teams, and maybe even leveraging honeypots to lure and observe threats in a controlled environment.
That's a very comprehensive set of responsibilities. It sounds like there are many distinct roles within a TI team, not just one threat analyst trying to do everything. Could you maybe break down some of the different threat intelligence roles and responsibilities we might see?
Certainly. An effective TI team really requires a range of specialists, each bringing a unique skill set to the table. Let's look at a few common ones. First, the intelligence analyst. These are often your strategic thinkers. They analyze, contextualize, and fuse acquired threat data from both internal and external sources. They generate actionable intelligence alerts, comprehensive reports, and concise briefings for different audiences. They develop that broad view of the threat landscape by monitoring IOCs and TTPs. Their work supports strategic decision-making and produces critical imminent threat reports, maybe for executives. Then we have the malware analyst. Their role is highly technical. They collect and analyze malware samples, often sourced from incident response projects or maybe those honeypots we mentioned. They perform malware sandbox operations to correlate TI with attack indicators, enhancing detection methods and identifying previously unknown related indicators. They're like the digital detectives of malicious code.
The deep divers.
Exactly. The incident responder is your rapid reaction force. They participate in investigating and analyzing escalated incidents, collaborating on effective remediation solutions. They validate and prioritize incidents, correlating them to specific threat actors or campaigns, and leverage TI to understand sophisticated attacks and TTPs during active breaches. An e-discovery and forensics examiner performs crucial e-discovery. That involves searching, finding, and retrieving digital data for evidence on corporate networks, systems, and devices, often as dictated by legal orders or internal investigations. This often means meticulously searching through text files, databases, spreadsheets, software applications, looking for those digital breadcrumbs. The security operator is often on the front lines, in the SOC perhaps. They manually correlate logs and events for investigations, monitor security perimeters, antivirus, anti-malware, and SEM events, and escalate security incidents to the appropriate teams like threat intelligence or incident response. They are the eyes and ears, filtering the noise. A vulnerability management analyst manages the technology patching process, identifies vulnerabilities in endpoints, servers, and devices, prioritizes them for mitigation based on risk and exploitability, actively discovers new vulnerabilities, and performs vulnerability assessments and penetration testing. They're constantly probing for weak points in your fortress defenses. Finally, the system data architect in a TI context manages and automates the flow of TI data. They design processes to support incident response, vulnerability management, security operations, and the intelligence functions themselves. They collaborate with vendors for data integration, update tools to handle varying indicator structures like STIX, TAX2, and CyBox, Cyber Observable Expression, and coordinate with other teams to create robust security technology correlation rules. Each role is crucial for a holistic TI program, much like different sections of your fortress needing specialized builders, engineers, and defenders.
That's a remarkably diverse group. It's really clear that it's not a one-size-fits-all role at all. Beyond these specific titles, though, what are the fundamental qualities or core competencies and skills that truly make a successful threat intelligence professional, regardless of their specific job description? What makes them tick?
That's a great question. When identifying core competencies and skills, it's really about a critical blend of intrinsic qualities, a relentless work ethic, and deep technical knowledge. A successful threat analyst, broadly speaking, needs Leadership quality, even if not in a formal management role, the ability to work autonomously, guide colleagues, educate management, and act decisively on threats. Strong analytical and critical thinking skills are paramount to sift through vast amounts of often ambiguous data and provide relevant, actionable recommendations. Profound curiosity is key, a constant desire to discover and interpret new information about elusive threat actors. A genuine willingness to learn the constantly evolving cybercriminal TTPs and attack campaigns is non-negotiable. Persistence and drive are needed to maintain productivity through complex, sometimes frustrating investigations. Robust technical experience in cybersecurity fundamentals, programming concepts, networks, and maybe big data analytics is usually essential. They should be self-initiating, team-oriented, possess strong organizational skills, and have exceptional communication skills to effectively raise organizational situational awareness at all levels, translating technical findings into business impact. It's a demanding role, no doubt, but highly rewarding for those who thrive on solving complex puzzles under pressure. Once we know the specific skills we need for these roles, we move to define a talent acquisition strategy. Understanding threat intelligence and putting it into practice requires the right talent, obviously. The first step, and often the most cost-effective, is to leverage your internal threat collaboration environment. Look within your existing workforce first, maybe in IT, security operations, or even risk management for individuals who show aptitude and interest. This is cost-effective, and these employees already understand the business operations and culture, which is a huge plus. If internal employees don't quite fit the specialized requirements, or if highly specialized skills are needed that you just don't have in-house, then recruiting the right talent externally is the next logical step. This might involve targeted job postings, working with specialized recruiters, or looking at university pipelines. A third option, which is often cost-effective, especially if an organization lacks the internal capacity to create dedicated positions or needs to scale quickly, is to outsource the process to a managed security service provider or MSSP. MSSPs can handle entire or partial network security monitoring and can seamlessly incorporate threat intelligence into existing defenses, providing expertise you might not have internally.
Okay, so we're building this team potentially with a mix of internal talent, external hires, or even outsourcing parts of it. How do we ensure this team is not just a collection of talented individuals, but a cohesive, effective unit working together? And where do we actually position them within the organization for maximum effectiveness, like strategically placing a defensive unit in our fortress for the best vantage point?
That brings us to the practicalities of building and positioning an intelligence team. Building an efficient CTI team is about more than just hiring skills. It's about selecting the right people with an inherently inquisitive nature and diverse backgrounds. You want complementary skills in areas like research, critical thinking, project management, maybe risk and change management, proactive experience in vulnerabilities or malware analysis, IT security implementation experience, and relevant certifications can also be indicators. The team might include a blend of technical collection analysts, collection managers, core threat analysts, and perhaps intelligence managers, each contributing their unique perspective and strengths. Once built, positioning is absolutely crucial. Understanding the threat intelligence requirements helps place the team correctly. Usually this means positioning them within the Security Operations Center or SOC, or perhaps closely aligned with the incident response team.
Why there specifically?
Because that central location is key. It allows them to oversee, or at least have direct visibility into, all activities related to adversaries and intrusions. It allows them to have a huge immediate impact on the program's output by being right at the very heart of daily security operations. They're not isolated in some ivory tower. They're embedded where the action is happening, like the general strategy room right next to the battlefield map, constantly receiving real-time intel. Finally, to prepare an effective threat intelligence team for the ongoing fight, several essential factors must be considered to set them up for success. We start by developing an intelligence priorities framework. We talked about PIRs earlier. This framework helps the team prioritize incoming information based on those PIRs, identify critical gaps in knowledge, and categorize requirements for efficient processing and tasking. Next, including infusing intelligence sources is critical. The CTI team must be supported and enabled to consolidate and correlate data from technical sources, open sources, and closed or proprietary sources to truly leverage actionable intelligence. Fusing these creates a richer picture. Then, mapping intelligence collection involves meticulously storing accumulated TI in a central database, perhaps the TIF for effective management and search. This ensures it can be readily used for security operations and decision-making. For example, automatically updating firewall block lists or IDSCPS detection rules based on new validated intelligence. It's also important, if possible, to include specialized threat intelligence experts on the team or have access to them. These individuals can review complex inbound TI, assess its significance and depth, and provide deep dives into particularly challenging threats or actors. And finally, distributing intelligence to the audience efficiently and effectively is paramount. We discussed consumer needs earlier. This often involves setting up regular dissemination schedules, weekly or daily reports, alerts, feeds, tailored to different audiences, allowing the team to track performance and ensuring the intelligence actually reaches those who need it most when they need it, and in a format they can readily consume and act upon. #tag 6. Overview of threat intelligence sharing.
Okay, so we have a strong team in place, a robust plan management support. It feels like the next logical step is realizing we shouldn't operate in a complete silo. That phrase, sharing is caring, seems to take on a whole new critical meaning in cybersecurity, doesn't it? How important is sharing threat intelligence, and what are the key considerations when you're essentially sharing potentially sensitive secrets to improve the collective defense?
You're absolutely right. In the face of these constantly evolving globally connected threats, timely intelligence and collaboration are absolutely paramount. The core idea here is that sharing threat intelligence helps prevent recurring incidents across multiple organizations and significantly reduces the collective damage. Think about it. Organized threat actors with sophisticated tools and shared infrastructure often render traditional isolated defense mechanisms less effective over time. Collaboration becomes vital for achieving broad situational awareness and protecting against widespread data breaches. It's very much like different fortresses on a shared border, signaling to each other about enemy troop movements. Everyone benefits from the shared knowledge. To do this effectively, organizations need to start by establishing threat intelligence sharing capabilities. This involves several important planning and preparation activities. First, defining the clear goals and objectives of information sharing is critical. What are we collectively trying to achieve by sharing? Is it early warning? TTP exchange? Second, identifying internal sources of threat information within our own organization, things like log files, security reports, incident data which we could potentially contribute back to the community. Third, defining the scope of information sharing activities. What specific information, under what conditions, and with whom exactly will it be shared?
So setting clear boundaries.
Precisely. Fourth, establishing clear rules for information sharing is absolutely key. What types of info can be shared? What are the conditions for sharing? Who are the approved recipients? What are the necessary redaction requirements to protect sensitive internal data? What are the source attribution policies, anonymous or attributed? And what handling designations will be used? The traffic light protocol, or TLP, is very common here, which we'll discuss. Fifth, joining relevant sharing communities is often necessary. Organizations might need to be part of multiple communities, maybe industry-specific ones, cross-sector ones, to meet their diverse objectives. And finally, planning to provide ongoing support for information sharing activities. This includes dedicated personnel time, robust infrastructure, and continuous training ensures sustained value and maintains trust within the sharing community.
That's a lot of upfront planning required to ensure responsible sharing, especially when sensitive information might be involved. What are some of the other crucial considerations for sharing threat intelligence itself beyond the initial setup?
Beyond the planning, there are several key considerations that directly impact the security and effectiveness of sharing. First, data handling classification. This defines how intelligence can be distributed and shared among individuals, communities, or organizations. The traffic light protocol, or TLP, is a commonly used method here. It classifies information as red, not for disclosure, restricted to recipients only; amber, limited disclosure, restricted to recipient's organization; green, community-wide sharing permitted within the community; or white, unlimited disclosure, public. But organizations must also be acutely aware of any specific protective markings, especially if dealing with government-sourced intelligence, which may have stricter rules that supersede TLP.
Got it. TLP is the standard guide. What else?
Second, information security. When sharing, we must always consider the core principles of confidentiality, integrity, availability, accountability, authenticity, non-repudiation, and privacy. Rigorously assessing security levels of sharing platforms, defining data retention policies, and implementing strong access control policies is essential to prevent unintended leaks or misuse of shared intelligence. Third, intelligence coverage. The overall value of a sharing platform relies heavily on its affiliates' contributions. Interestingly, smaller organizations often share more readily because they seek to build trust relationships and gain broader insights they couldn't get otherwise. Larger organizations sometimes hesitate more due to perceived risks. Fourth, format. To exchange intelligence effectively and enable automation, platforms must be compatible with standard formats like OpenIOC, IODF, Incident Object Description Exchange Format, IODS, say in ASIA, Cybersecurity Incident, Verus, Vocabulary for Event Recording and Incident Sharing, and of course, 6TAC2, Indian ASI. This ensures machine readability and allows tools to process the information automatically. And fifth, automation.
Exchange platforms really should allow for automated sharing of intelligence to handle the immense volume and speed required in modern cyber defense. Manual sharing just doesn't scale effectively. Now, when it comes to sharing intelligence with a variety of organizations, understanding who to share with and how is crucial. Organizations often accumulate data from various open and proprietary sources. There are several types of organizations we might share with: Information Sharing and Analysis Centers, or ISACs. These are typically nonprofit associations that provide industry-specific threat information, fostering collaboration within a particular sector like finance, healthcare, or energy. Commercial vendors. Organizations often share user experience feedback or anonymized threat data with vendors to help them improve their products. This is generally a relatively low-risk sharing activity. Trading partners. This involves more semi-formal sharing between business partners, often requiring both technical platforms for exchange and strong legal agreements like NDAs to protect both parties' interests. Lastly, informal contacts.
This is common security professionals sharing information casually among trusted colleagues or friends in the industry. However, this carries inherent risks if proprietary information is inadvertently disclosed, and it's often not machine readable, making it less scalable or systematically useful.
Okay, so it sounds like there's a wide spectrum of potential partners and methods for sharing, from formal ISACs to informal chats. Can you maybe elaborate a bit on the different types of sharing partners organizations might encounter based on the kind of intelligence they provide, from basic feeds up to more comprehensive intelligence?
Certainly. Threat intelligence is a vast landscape, and organizations often engage with more than one type of partner to get a complete picture. We can categorize them into three main types based on their offerings. First, providers of threat indicators. These are often security technology vendors or various open source projects. They provide raw data, signatures, and screening rules designed to feed directly into security technologies like firewalls, anti-malware software, IDSIPs, and Unified Threat Management, or UTM systems. These are crucial at the tactical level for blocking known bad stuff, but they may lack broader context and, if not properly validated or curated, can sometimes lead to disruptive false positives. Second, providers of threat data feeds. These vendors and security service enterprises typically offer validated and prioritized threat indicators, often coupled with more detailed technical analysis of things like malware samples, botnets, DDoS attack methods, and other malicious tools. They may also provide useful statistics and trend information. These feeds are often used by SOC and IR teams at the tactical and operational levels to provide diagnostic data about attack tools and maybe some basic attacker information. They add a valuable layer of analysis beyond just raw indicators.
Okay, so indicators, then feeds with some analysis. What's the top tier?
Third, providers of comprehensive cyber threat intelligence. These are a select few organizations, often specialized CTI vendors, that integrate all three types of intelligence-validated indicators, contextualized data feeds, and strategic intelligence. Their deliverables are extensive and can include things like tagged IOCs linked to specific actors or campaigns, comprehensive technical analyses, detailed adversary research, motivations, capabilities, holistic threat landscape assessments relevant to your industry or region, and even customized threat information tailored specifically for strategic, operational, and tactical consumers within your organization. They aim to offer that holistic 360-degree view, combining the what with the critical why and how. When selecting these partners, there are some important selection criteria organizations should consider. You should really develop your own rigorous checklist. Key factors often include global and cultural reach. How many languages do they cover? How many researchers and analysts do they have globally? Historical data and knowledge. How long have they been building their database? What's the tenure of their analysts? Past attacks often inform new ones.
The range of intelligence deliverables they offer. Do they provide all three types? Is it tagged effectively? Is it detailed enough? Does it arrive with appropriate frequency? APIs and integrations. Do they offer robust support for your SIEM and other security products? Can they provide customized connectors if needed? Their intelligence platform, knowledge base, and portal. How good are their collection, analysis, and dissemination capabilities? How easy is it to search? Can you get a test run? Client services, can they provide customized TI? Can they perform specific research on request? Can they tailor dissemination formats? And crucially, access to experts. Can you get direct access to their analysts for queries, to clarify analysis, or to help build credibility with your own management?
That's a very thorough checklist for choosing the right partners. It really highlights that it's not a decision to be taken lightly at all. Finally, given the highly sensitive nature of this information, how do we ensure we're sharing intelligence securely? It's one thing to want to collaborate for the greater good, but it's another thing entirely to do it safely and responsibly.
Absolutely. Sharing intelligence securely is paramount for improving collective defenses while protecting everyone involved. We need to consider several crucial points to maintain trust and protect sensitive data throughout the sharing process. First, authentication. Who exactly is authorized to access the sharing system and receive intelligence? How will entitlements be managed, perhaps leveraging existing identity and access management or IAM systems? Is multi-factor authentication, or MFA, required, especially for external partners accessing your systems? How do we securely authenticate machine-to-machine sharing for automated feeds using API keys certificates? And what's the secure process for deprovisioning partners promptly when relationships change or end? Second, authorization. This defines what specific types of threat data and sources each authenticated partner is allowed to access. How are these entitlements, including adding new partners and making changes to access levels for existing ones, managed effectively and, importantly, audited? Granular control is key. Third, data protection. How is the threat intelligence data itself anonymized, if necessary, and/or secured during sharing? Is robust data encryption necessary, especially for data in transit over networks or data at rest on sharing platforms, to prevent unauthorized access or interception? And fourth, logging activity. How do we meticulously track what information each partner is accessing, when they accessed it, and from where? Organizations must be able to check the content provided by partners for balance and appropriateness, and importantly, trace information access for accountability, audit purposes, and potential incident investigation if a leak occurs. These considerations ensure that while we share to strengthen collective defenses, we do so responsibly, judiciously, and protect sensitive information with the utmost care, reinforcing the trust that truly underpins effective and sustainable collaboration. #7, Reviewing Threat Intelligence Program.
Okay, finally. No big project, especially one as dynamic and critical as building and running a threat intelligence program, is ever truly complete without looking back and learning, right? So once our fortress is operational, our sentinels are on duty, the intelligence is flowing, how do we actually review its effectiveness? How do we measure its success or maybe even identify its failures so we can improve?
That's a critical and, frankly, often overlooked step in the continuous intelligence lifecycle. The core idea behind reviewing a threat intelligence program is not just to assess its initial success or failure after launch. It's about continuously measuring its effectiveness, identifying areas to improve management methods and processes, and ultimately ensuring that the TI goals are consistently being met in an ever-changing threat landscape. It absolutely has to be an ongoing process, not just a one-time post-mortem conducted only after a major breach happens. One key activity is performing a threat intelligence-led engagement review. The primary purpose here is to evaluate overall end-user satisfaction after intelligence has been disseminated and actually used in operations. Did the delivered intelligence provide sufficient understanding for mitigating various threats? Did it actually help them do their job better, faster, or more effectively? This review directly determines the program's perceived success and, more importantly, drives continuous improvement based on user feedback. Key questions we ask are, did the program completely solve the issues it intended to address or just partially? Is there significant scope for further improvement and delivering even bigger benefits in the future? And what critical lessons did we learn, good and bad, that can be applied to future TI programs or iterations? This review ideally starts after the threat intelligence has been delivered, consumed, and most initial operational kinks have been worked out, giving enough time for the real impact to be felt and assessed.
So it's really about checking if the intelligence actually did its job for the people using it and if there's room to grow, making sure it's a living, evolving system based on feedback. What other considerations for reviewing a threat intelligence program should we keep in mind to make the review process itself genuinely effective and constructive and not just devolve into, a blame game?
That's a very important point. To make the review truly effective and constructive, several considerations are key. First, openness. Everyone involved, from the review team conducting the assessment to all the stakeholders providing input, must be encouraged to be open and honest about their feedback, without any fear of reprisal. This fosters genuine insight, not just polite responses. Second, objectiveness. The focus must strictly be on facts, data, metrics, and identifiable improvements. Meticulously avoid assigning blame or simply repeating past mistakes without understanding the root cause. Third, document success. Don't just focus on failures. Meticulously record the practices and processes that demonstrably led to success, including clear recommendations for how these successes can be replicated or scaled in future projects or phases. Fourth, look with hindsight. Analyze newly discovered facts or insights that were unknown during implementation but perhaps increased risks. Critically, recommend ways to proactively identify similar factors or warning signs in future projects. Learn from what you didn't know then. Fifth, focus on future. The main objective of the review is learning from mistakes to avoid repeating them, and applying acquired knowledge to new projects or iterations rather than just dwelling on past shortcomings. And sixth, focus on both positives and negatives. It's vital to learn what worked well so you can repeat it and what went wrong so you can avoid it. This leads to more efficient and effective future projects and continuous optimization of the current program. It's really about continuous improvement, not just fault finding. This leads us directly into the process of assessing the success and failure of the threat intelligence program more formally. Measuring success and learning constructively from failure has a profound impact on an organization's overall business practices and provides invaluable learning opportunities for team members. The comprehensive review activities typically include conducting a gap analysis, rigorously evaluating how closely the actual project results match the original objectives defined way back in the project charter. This involves reviewing all deliverables for quality and identifying precisely how to close any existing gaps between expectation and reality. Determining if TI program goals were accomplished. Is the deliverable, the intelligence itself, functioning exactly as expected? Are error rates low? Is it fit for its intended purpose? Can it effectively adjust to future demands and evolving threats? Are users adequately trained and supported in using it? Are the underlying systems and controls working as intended? What supporting activities are still needed? How are any identified issues being addressed? Does the final outcome truly align with the original goals for quality, schedule, and budget? Determining fulfillment of stakeholders. Are the end users and the original sponsors satisfied with the intelligence they are receiving and its impact on their work or decisions? What are the program's observable effects on clients or customers, if any? And critically, how do we effectively address any dissatisfaction that has emerged during the review? Determining costs and benefits. What were the final total costs of the program, including ongoing operational and future support costs? How do these compare to the tangible and intangible benefits actually achieved? If the ROI is lower than expected, what specific improvements are needed to enhance its value proposition? Identifying areas of further improvement. Were all the expected benefits fully achieved? What additional training, process changes, or technological enhancements are possible or necessary? What additional, perhaps unanticipated benefits could still be realized with adjustments? Identifying lessons learned. This is a deep dive into the project's journey. How well were deliverables, costs, and timescales evaluated and managed throughout? What went wrong? Why did it go wrong? And crucially, how can we avoid similar issues in the future? Equally important, what went exceptionally well, and how can we replicate that success? And finally, reporting findings and recommendations. Presenting the comprehensive outcome of the review clearly and concisely, noting any immediate needs for improvement, outlining key learnings for future programs, and identifying opportunities for new programs or phases to build upon the achieved successes. It's a holistic view that ensures continuous evolution and adaptation, making your digital fortress stronger and smarter with every single lesson learned along the way. #tag key learning points and recap.
Wow, that was a truly comprehensive deep dive into setting up, running, and refining a threat intelligence program. Expert speaker, if you had to distill this entire very detailed conversation into maybe 3 or 4 core takeaways for our listener, the absolute must-knows to walk away with, what would they be?
That's a great challenge as we covered a lot of ground, but if I had to boil it down, I'd narrow it to these 4 foundational insights. Recap 1. The foundation is absolutely key. You simply cannot overstate the importance of truly understanding your organization's unique threat landscape, its current security posture, and its internal capabilities. That's your people, processes, and technology before you do anything else. Without this solid bedrock, you're essentially building your digital fortress on sand, right? Your entire program will be inherently unstable, vulnerable to the first strong challenge.
Building on sand. Got it. Number 2.
Recap 2. Requirements drive everything.
Clearly defined and meticulously prioritized intelligence requirements are the absolute lifeblood of an effective TI program. From those high-level strategic needs down to the granular tactical collection details, maybe even using structured methods like Moscow, these requirements ensure your program is focused, efficient, and actually delivers actionable insights that are relevant for all stakeholders and teams across the organization. It's really about asking the right questions to get the right answers.
Makes sense. Requirements first. What's third?
Recap 3. Collaboration and support are critical. Building the right team with diverse, specialized skills is vital. But so is establishing strong, clear communication channels with management, often formalized through a project charter and a compelling business case. And actively engaging in threat intelligence sharing with trusted partners, ISACs, or even informally, amplifies your defensive capabilities far, far beyond what any single organization could ever hope to achieve alone. It's truly a collective defense in a shared digital battleground.
Strength in numbers, essentially.
Okay.
And the last one.
Recap 4. Continuous improvement through review. A threat intelligence program is not a static set-it-and-forget-it project. It absolutely has to be an ongoing, dynamic cycle that adapts constantly. Regular, honest, and objective reviews are essential to continuously assess its success, learn from challenges, both big and small, adapt to the ever-evolving threat landscape, and ensure its sustained value and effectiveness over time. You simply must learn from every experience, positive or negative, to strengthen your defenses perpetually. #tag closing note.
That's fantastic. It's incredibly clear from our discussion that building and maintaining a successful threat intelligence program is a really multifaceted endeavor. It requires strategic thought, careful, detailed planning, and an unwavering commitment to continuous learning and adaptation. Thank you so much, expert speaker, for guiding us through this incredibly important chapter and helping us understand how to build truly resilient digital fortresses.
My pleasure entirely. The world of cyber threats, as we know, is always changing, always evolving. Having these foundational elements in place truly empowers an organization to not just react to threats, but to anticipate them and stay ahead. And that's where the real power of intelligence truly lies.
Absolutely. And for you, our listener, maybe take a moment to think about how these principles, defining requirements, detailed planning stages, building the right team, fostering collaboration, and embracing continuous review, how they can be applied not just to cybersecurity, but perhaps to any complex project or initiative in your own life or work. The principles of clear goals define scope, resource allocation, and continuous feedback. Well, they're universally powerful tools for success, aren't they? Next time in the deep dive, we'll shift gears from all this planning and structuring to pure action. We'll be diving into the critical phase of data collection and processing. We'll explore the sophisticated methods used to gather that raw intelligence and crucially transform it into something truly valuable and actionable. You won't want to miss it. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious and stay secure.